The good news is that another pro-Palestine student has been released from ICE detention. Hi everybody, I'm Allie 202 and we're back with another episode of your sandwiched news series, where I first tell you a piece of good news and then a piece of bad news and then something positive you can do for the world right now. The purpose of this series is to keep you informed about the state of the world without derailing your nervous system. We'll have good news at the beginning to retain your faith in humanity and an action item at the end of every video so that you feel like you understand the day-to-day steps you can be taking to resist fascism in America. My long-term goal is to post an episode every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, both on YouTube and Substack. My Substack will be rolling out soon, so keep an eye out for that. Today's three stories are going to be: number one, Rumeysa Ozturk, a pro-Palestine student, was released from ICE detention. Number two, Israel has released a horrifying new plan for Gaza that we'll talk about the details of. And number three, the action item is going to be how you can interrupt Avelo Airlines' attempts to operate deportation flights in partnership with the Department of Homeland Security. This action item today is really clever and fun, so hang on to the end of the video. I'm super excited to tell you about it. Let's hop right into the good news. This is Rumeysa Ozturk, a graduate student at Tufts University, and here she is standing with Senator Ed Markey from Massachusetts after her release from immigration detention. She just spent 6 weeks in custody and has finally been released upon court orders after a federal judge in Vermont ordered her release, and she returned to Boston Logan Airport the next day. Ms. Ozturk was among the more than 1,000 international students whose visas were canceled by the Trump administration recently, and her case specifically was that she had written an opinion piece in the student newspaper at Tufts criticizing the university's response to pro-Palestinian demands. In other words, she wrote an op-ed criticizing Israel, and the government decided to try to deport her over it. The video of her arrest went viral. You may have seen it. She was walking down a sidewalk in Somerville, Massachusetts, when she was surrounded by armed immigration agents and whisked into a van. She was essentially disappeared off the street, and people were understandably very frightened by it. She was driven to New Hampshire and then to Vermont and then flown into a federal detention facility in Louisiana. Ms. Ozturk said that while she was in detention, she had friends and professors helping her still with her studies. I'm going to go ahead and insert a video clip of her explaining the support that she was receiving from her faculty and peers.
This has been very difficult time for me, for my community at Tufts, at Turkey. My advisor sent me my dissertation proposal to the president. My lab mates have been reading me books on the phone that are very old. And my department professor students has sent me so many letters of support.
It is obviously a massive win that Rumeysa has been released from detention, especially just after Mohsen Madawi was also released. That was featured in a former Good News, Bad News, and What to Do About It video that I will tag up here at the top of the screen. This is not the end of the fight for free speech for international students. It is, however, an indicator that the Trump administration is starting to figure out that it can't get away with this. In late April, for example, the Trump administration abruptly restored the ability of thousands of international students to study in the country legally. Basically, there's been a ton of back and forth. There's been revocation of visas and then restoring of visas. There's been sudden arrests and then releases from immigration detention. This is probably going to continue to be a back and forth process, and we need to have the stamina to continue fighting these, both in the court systems and also in the court of public opinion. So keep talking about stories like Rumeysa Ozturk's and Mahmoud Khalil, who is still imprisoned and actually recently missed the birth of his child because he's in ICE detention. But sorry, this is the good news section. We're talking about Rumeysa, and we are so happy that she has been released and that she has the support of her Congress people in her case. All right, we're going to move on to the bad news section of this episode, and we're specifically going to be talking about the new Israeli plan for Gaza that has been released by the Israeli government. It's possible that you've seen headlines to the effect of Israeli officials considering reoccupation of Gaza. I'm going to talk in a little bit more detail about what the encampments segment of this plan would look like with the help of a few articles. The plan would involve displacing hundreds of thousands of Palestinians from the north of Gaza, and the creation of 6 encampments in the south are set to be run with the help of private security contractors from the United States. We're going to talk about that in a minute. Palestinians will be forced to move to these encampments or starve. They will be the only place where food and humanitarian aid will be provided. Each encampment would be for 5,000 to 6,000 families, and each household would need to send someone either weekly or bi-weekly to trek for miles to pick up a food parcel for their family. A reminder or an update if you weren't aware, for about 2 months now, Israel has blocked all humanitarian aid from entering Gaza, so people right now are starving. Using starvation as a weapon of war is a war crime, gentle reminder, and starvation would also be used, right, to try to force people to move to these encampments. Israel says it would use facial recognition software to identify people picking up food parcels in order to deny aid to Hamas, though as Al Jazeera mentions, Israel treats about every fighting age male as a Hamas operative, so unclear exactly how this would play out. Worth noting that experts and UN agencies are decrying the plan as impractical and inhumane. I want to talk specifically, though, about the 2 US companies that would potentially be involved here. They're called Safe Reach Solutions and UG Solutions. They would be providing security and possibly helping with food distribution. According to the Washington Post, most Safe Reach Solutions would be in charge of handling planning and logistics, and they would subcontract on-the-ground security operations to UG Solutions. These people would be armed and they would have their own force protection, but they would not have detention authority, allegedly. Unsurprisingly, spokespeople for SRS and UG Solutions declined to comment for this article for the Washington Post. It's important to talk about these American companies and the American government with respect to Israel and Gaza because U.S. material and political support has been key to Israel's ability to rain destruction in Gaza, as it's been doing for the past couple years now. And this does make Trump, unfortunately, one of the most powerful foreign leaders because we provide so much military assistance and weapons aid to Israel. He could hypothetically have the leverage to force Israel to change course. But obviously he's not known for being the biggest humanitarian in the world, and someone who is familiar with the deliberations says that the Trump administration is involved only to extent that the president does not wish to be seen as a loser on an issue that he declared he would resolve. So glad that he is so influential here. Under this Israeli plan, the participation of at least some humanitarian organizations is seen as essential, says the Washington Post, but most of those groups operating inside Gaza have said, no, we refuse to participate in any scheme that does not adhere to the global humanitarian principles of humanity, impartiality, independence, and neutrality, and this Israeli plan is awful. I appreciate this quote from a policy lead for Oxfam who said, moving aid into fenced, supervised spaces under military or private contractor control recalls some of the darkest chapters of human failure. That's not protection, that's coercion. We would never support any model that would be treating civilians basically as prisoners. Donald Trump is heading to the Middle East and he'll be on his way to Saudi Arabia, the UAE, and Qatar this week. Israel has said it would not start its offensive until after Trump's trip, and of course I will keep you posted. But yeah, I mean, this has been a sucky week of reporting. I think multiple of the bad news stories at this point have had just super concentration camp vibes between this story and the story of what's going on in CCOT in El Salvador, where we're deporting people without due process. It's been jarring. And so with all that in mind, we're going to move into the What Can You Do for the State of the World Right Now segment, and we are going to be talking about deportations and specifically getting in the way of an airline that's trying to contract with the Department of Homeland Security to operate deportation flights. Here's how you can get yourself in the mix. There's an organization called GenZ for Change. They're best known on TikTok. If you've ever watched political TikToks, you have honestly probably seen them pop up on your feed. They're a consortium of left-wing content creators that runs these projects for social good. And right now they're taking on Avelo Airlines, which is a commercial airline that I actually talked about in, I think, my most recent video in this series. This is a small airline with its hub in New Haven, Connecticut that wants to start chartering deportation flights in Arizona on behalf of the Trump administration. In fact, they've already signed a contract to begin this operation. Where we come in is that Avelo is right now actively recruiting new crew members to staff these deportation flights. So GenZ has coded a super cool and helpful new tool to fill their applicant pool with fake applications, and this is where you come in. If you open the code within the script, it'll allow you to easily fill out as many applications as you'd like. All you have to do is open the link, select the Runtime tab on the upper portion of the page, and click Run All. Let's do it together. I just opened the link. It's loading right now. Okay, I'm clicking this play. I'm going to click run anyway because I do trust team at GenZ for Change. Right now I'm just clicking through all of the play buttons. Going to wait until they each have a green check mark next to them. Okay, perfect. That took 19 seconds, it says. Python initialization. GenZ for Change, while we're waiting for this to work, has done a whole bunch of these before. So for example, when Starbucks was union busting, they created a fake application filing system at the Starbucks locations that were firing union members and then trying to rehire scabs. They were able to interrupt the application process with a code like this. They've also written codes before that send like nearly infinite emails to Congress over specific issues. They've been super, super creative, and it's really fun because it's a team of digital natives dealing with companies and a government which oftentimes is not run by digital natives, and so it's kind of fun the ways that they can figure out how to get in the middle. Okay, running the main code. Okay, so right now what it says, it's filling out the form, it's attaching a resume, it's filling out a first name. Okay, now it's filling out a last name and an email and a phone number and an address and a city. It's essentially creating a fake application. Oh, my computer will restart in 47 seconds to install updates. Okay, hang on, I need to pause this to make sure that doesn't happen. Okay, sorry, my computer is trying to install an update, so I had to pause it, but I screenshotted what the code looked like when it finished an application. It was going through all of the stuff I was talking about before on screen, and then it said application logged, form filled successfully, waiting for 2 seconds before the next iteration, starting a new iteration, and then it started over again. It said, okay, generating fake identity, generating resume, etc., and it went on creating another application. So I officially just filled in one fake one, and you can do that as many times as you want and just leave it on in your browser at the link that I have dropped in the description. And again, what that will do is send in false applications to Avelo Airlines so that they have trouble finding real applicants and filling in their staff for these deportation flights that they're set to be sending out of Arizona. All right, everybody, that is it for today's good news, bad news, and what you can do about it. I really appreciate the support so far in this series. It's been overwhelmingly positive. The biggest thing that I'm working on is just getting views up and creating a Substack where I can get this to you all each week in written form as well. Again, my goal is to be posting these Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays so that you get 3 installations of something to keep your faith up in humanity, something to keep you realistic about bad things going on in the world, and something to keep you productive and involved in fighting fascism in the United States. Remember to turn your post notifications on for my channel, since I typically just post YouTube shorts and they come up automatically in your feed, but since I'm posting these long videos, you'll need to be notified by YouTube that the videos are up. And otherwise, I'm sending so much love to every single one of you. I appreciate your involvement so far in this series. Feel free to send it to a friend, and I will see you in the next episode.